Hello and welcome to the Forklift Certified Podcast.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. My name's Monolith. People call me Mono, and I'm talking today with
Johnny.
Awesome. Wonderful. So, what are we gonna discuss? I had some ideas, like topical ideas that might be interesting to talk about, in
Oh,
case
yeah.
you don't have anything on your mind.
What ideas are those?
Oh, just like self-worth being tied to somebody's like job position, you know?
Hmm.
Because that's like pretty common nowadays. So I've been feeling the effects of that the past couple of months because I'm sort of in between jobs, and yeah, it's kind of rough, you know.
Hmm.
Kind of feels like
Tell
you,
me more.
yeah, it's almost like you don't have a purpose, right? And I don't know when that sort of started for me. I don't know if this is like similar for you. Do you feel like a similar way when you like well, at the times where you didn't have a job?
Hmm. I don't know. Tell me more about how it is for you and what do you mean by the self-worth being attached to a job.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it's like an identity thing because I'm like a guy, you know, and like men are supposed to be providers and all that stuff. And if you're like not earning money, then what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm not sure if it's that or if it's like just a cultural thing that I adapted from all the people that I watch online. Because I know this is like pretty common in the Americas, for example, or like in other Western countries, where
Yeah.
people will like tie a lot of their sense of self-worth to their job position, you know? And that also
Hmm.
like comes out during interviews, where people like only talk about business-related things, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's all like very separated from the sort of personality. I don't know how to put it, and like the personal experiences of the individual. It's all just sort of
Hmm.
like, what do you do? You know, that's what defines you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on that?
I don't know. I think for me, it's like it's like I personally like never liked working, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's like a kind of a resistance to like care much about like titles or careers or stuff like that.
Hmm.
But that does not mean that that like I don't, for example, that like I do feel frustration, for example, when let's say when someone just because they have a particular title or a particular position or something, that they are just automatically more respected than someone else, even though someone else might be saying the exact same thing, just because it comes from a person of authority, some kind of position of authority, or some kind of title or hierarchy in the career field. That those words will have more ears listening to them than a random person would, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
But that also like sounds kind of like you have an issue with sort of the hierarchical structure of things, right?
yeah, because I think it feels like it's not nuanced enough. It's like there's not enough consideration to what is being done and what is being said and what is being thought and so on, as much as just the title that a person has, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
uh, it's not it doesn't seem like the actual quality of what something does or what someone does or what someone says is taken as seriously as the position of someone else, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that's very frustrating for me, and that makes me like it sometimes makes me like kind of like revolt in a way internally and go like, fuck this shit and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
fuck this system and so on. But at the same time, it's I don't know. I can see it as being like a coping mechanism as well of like, oh, I'm not doing something as useful or whatever. I don't have the credentials or whatever, and therefore I feel mad about it or something like that. It's kind of tricky when it comes to like I guess self worth and stuff like that. I guess it does affect me in some way, but I feel like I'm totally usually totally fine not doing anything for like long, 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 long periods of time, and I don't care if I'm being productive or not productive. Like I don't give a fuck. The issue is that you know money doesn't come out of the sky, so I eventually have to come out of it, and then not getting like if I am for a long time without a job, then it starts causing me some anxiety and stuff. You know, I'm not sure if that's like the kind of stuff that you were referring to. But when it comes to like the men being productive, sorry, the men being like the providers of the house and stuff like that, in that kind of sense, I do feel like it does have an effect. But I think I don't know. I feel like I just never gave much of a fuck about it. So it probably is a little bit less for me than it is for most men. But it's still there for sure. It's still there. Like I notice it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of like interested. How much of that sort of detachment from this idea of what a man is supposed to do is personal to you, or and how much is it like cultural, like related to the culture you grew up in?
Mm. But sure. I think like where I grew up, I think usually the men are the providers. Usually the men are the ones doing the most, you know, taking care of the house, taking care of the family, stuff like that. So that is very much the case. Like everyone in my family, that is the case. My uncles and my father, and my mother was the case. For yeah, my grandparents was also the case. I'm trying to remember. Like it's like I think my whole family's kind of like that. Like the men are always the providers, and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. Something just like never really clicked for me. I guess that like only that concept only became a thing when I was like already kind of old. Only then did I become. But then I started to hear this,
Yeah.
that the men are supposed to be this, blah blah blah, and I feel like it didn't affect me as much as other people. Maybe I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I just never gave a fuck about this stuff. Like I never liked money. I never liked work. I never liked you know having to do stuff for other people and stuff like that. Like I never really cared much for that. Unless I want to, unless I want to do something for someone else, or unless I want to help someone else, or unless I want to like contribute to this person and not necessarily take something back in return, something
Yeah.
like that. But if I don't want that, then I just don't really give much of a fuck about the rest. If that makes sense. I don't know. I never really thought much about it actually. It's kind of new for me
Yeah.
to think about it. I think.
Yeah. You're not like a big rat race guy. Like you don't like climbing the corporate ladder, is what I'm hearing.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of actually enjoyed sort of like the corporate environment in my last job, and I got sick of it very quickly as well. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Because that was like my first experience working a white collar job. Up until then, I only did like manual labor in like factories and restaurants. You know what I mean?
hmm
And it's like it's really nice not having to break your back for some money. You know what I mean?
hmm For sure. Yeah.
And I just never. I feel like I don't ever want to go back to like how things were before then.
Mm,
Even though things tend to be like a bit rigid with like the hierarchies and all that stuff and people's egos getting involved. But like that's the case everywhere, kind of, right?
mm. Yeah.
Yeah, like you
Yeah. I
mentioned
think.
the. Mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like you mentioned the whole thing about like people's opinions getting valued based on their positions rather than their expertise. And I
Yeah.
remember a lot of my friends who are like into coding, right? They're like STEM majors. They complain a lot about like their project managers being sort of unrelated to the coding field at all. You know what I mean? And they make all these
hmm
like ridiculous demands, and they're sort of forced to provide results under extreme time pressure, which is something I heard is pretty common, and how much that sort of like wears them out. You know what I mean?
hmm
Because maybe like a week before the project finishes, they want some ridiculous feature like sort of shoved into the whole project because the client may demand it or they think it's gonna like make themselves look better. And it's also like a big issue. If somebody's like higher up on the ladder and they want to like continue climbing, they're sort of incentivized to squeeze the people below them as much as they can, you know? You
Yes.
sort of get that from like MBAs and stuff when they like join companies and they very common in video games, they introduce microtransactions and all that bullshit cosmetics and they try to like squeeze the player base for as much money as they can because that sort of like increases that's the whole value that they add to the company. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even though
Yep.
that's like at a detriment to the end user experience, for example.
Yep. Like even at my current job, but that is the case. Like the people who sell the most are the ones who usually get the the promotions and stuff. as far as I know, that's like at least the core thing through which they are evaluated and stuff. So yeah, that's very frustrating. And then also there's the other aspect of like, let's say let's say for example you say that eating oatmeal is very, very good for you in the morning, right?
Hmm.
Let's say you say that, and then a doctor goes and says the exact same thing. Oatmeal in the morning is very, very good for you. If the same person, there's a random person on the street, they know you as being a random guy and the doctor as being a doctor, they will listen to you. There's a higher likelihood that they will listen the word of the doctor than your word, even though what's being said is exactly the same. And just because the doctor has credentials as a position of authority in his particular field and so on. And I feel like there's not enough emphasis on actually hearing what is being said independently of where it comes from. And actually hearing if something is actually contemplating, okay, is this thing true? Is this thing valuable? Does this thing make some sense? Is this thing applicable to my life? Is this thing applicable to my situation? Stuff like that. And it feels like as long if you don't have some kind of status like this, there's a very low chance that people will listen to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So unless you put yourself in some kind of position of authority, or you yourself have some kind of credentials or something like that, then people will listen to you. Then people will benefit from it because they are listening to you, to your advice and stuff like that. But if they were to be listening to you before you got your credentials, they would get the exact same benefit because you might have all the knowledge, you might have all the understanding of a particular topic, a particular field, but not have the credentials. You might have known just like a lot of things about the particular topic because you worked a lot about it and you explored a lot of the particular topic in your own time and stuff like that. But because you don't have credentials, people will not take it as seriously, right? And that is a bit frustrating as well, if that makes sense.
Right. You're sort of like an advocate for people doing their own research and thinking for themselves, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, like people paying attention to what is being heard, to what is being said, as opposed to like just listening, just like asking for the background first, if that makes sense. It's like if this person is saying something, okay, let me just pay attention to what is being said, and let me see if it makes some sense or not. Let me see if what is being said is useful and applicable to me or not. Yeah, that's kind of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm sort of like thinking about it because I can imagine some cases where the opposite would probably lead to like better outcomes, you know what I mean? So for example, the oatmeal example that you mentioned, if some like random guy tells me, hey, you should eat oatmeal without like any further context, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to like consider that information. But when I know somebody's went to like college for like 4+ years to become a medical doctor, somebody who is sort of acknowledged by the system as having a great understanding of the human body, when he
Mm-hmm.
makes that sort of a recommendation, I think it makes sense that it carries a lot more weight.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about like somebody living their day-to-day life, so like coming back from work, taking care of their family, I wonder like how much time do they even have to really just consider what a random person on the street is going to say? You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. I agree.
And
I agree that like
how much time do they have to like research all the stuff that's randomly being said on the internet, especially in the current day and age when there's like so much misinformation everywhere, you know?
true.
So
Yeah, that's
like I
true.
feel like it makes just sense for like a normal functioning society for there to like exist experts in fields, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Who just like we can sort of like take what they say kind of for granted basically because
Mm-hmm.
we place trust in them. And of course they have to
Mm-hmm.
work to earn that trust and to maintain that in a healthy system. Even though
Yeah.
ideally everybody would like be their own thinker and like coming up with their own conclusions, but I feel like people just don't have enough time to be in the loop about everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that, and I understand that. And at the same time, it's like I think about it like for a situation that happened with me, for example, a few years ago,
Mhm.
when I met this random guy on a random Discord server where he was talking about meditation and the Eastern philosophies and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And he was like a random dude that I knew nothing about him. I don't know his background. I don't know what he has done. I don't know anything. And he was like just talking about his stuff. And he was like kind of, he wasn't necessarily teaching, but he was like kind of, I guess, providing some kind of guidance or advice or something like that.
Mm.
And, you know, it kind of, I guess it kind of resonated with me in a way. And I know nothing about this guy. It was not like he was not a monk. He was not a meditation teacher. He didn't have any position of authority, right? He was just some random guy that I met, and I listened to him. And just by listening to him, then I actually got a lot of benefit to my own life just by listening to a random guy, right? Like I paid attention to what he was saying, and I took his words with care and consideration, even though he's not a meditation master, he's not a Zen master, he's not a Buddha, he's not a, you know, any psychology major or he's not anything like that. He's just like some random dude talking about these topics, which clearly now it's in retrospective is easy to understand that like he has probably spent a lot of time in exploring this stuff and practicing it for himself and stuff like that. But back then, I didn't know anything about it, and it made I don't know. I just listened to his word and got a lot of benefit, right? And it got me wondering, like, if people were to like just pay attention to the things that are being said, like people will get so much benefit out of like daily interactions, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Simply, independently of you know this person being like a doctor or not. Now, of course, I understand that like it's not. I guess for the vast majority of people, it's not practical, right?
Hmm.
It's not feasible to like just listen to everyone and like assume that everything people are saying is like worth listening. It's like that has some value applicable to our own life that's going to be beneficial or something like that. It's not very practical. It's a lot easier to like respect that when some person has some kind of credentials behind it, of course. But nonetheless, it's still frustrating if that makes sense.
Yeah. But also, like in that example, like I feel like the way he spoke about the topic must have had like some impact on you. Like it must have seemed like this person is quite competent regarding the
Hmm.
thing that he like talks about, just from a perspective of fluency. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. But I'm saying that like even in an example of like daily life, if someone's like talking about nutrition in a very fluid way, but he's not a credential guy, most people would not listen nearly as much as if that same person would go to a nutritionist office and just listen to the same exact advice. You know?
See, I'm actually not sure about that.
Yeah.
Because when I think about like examples of people that I listen to a lot, they usually they clearly know a lot of stuff about what they're talking about, like regardless of credentials. Maybe I'm just like the outlier here. Maybe most people don't think about it this way, but usually when you like ask a person a lot of questions about a topic and they respond very quickly and like with a lot of information, I feel like it becomes like very clear that they know a lot about a certain topic. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because that sort of like
Yeah.
happened with that. What was his name? Yeah, Thor, like PirateSoftware.
Hmm.
He talked
Yeah.
to like Dr.K, like online psychiatrist, like he had him on an interview, and they actually started talking about medicine because the Thor guy takes care of like ferrets. He has like a ferret sort of sanctuary, and
Hmm.
they talked about like how certain like chemicals move around in the body, in the blood, and like what sort of like effects it has on them. And it was like quite clear that he did his research. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
this was already you could tell that this was like a high level sort of conversation being had because the psychologist guy, he's like an expert in medicine, right? In the human body. And this guy, even though he's just like a layman, he's actually like a programmer, a coder. It was like very clear that he like knew what he was talking about.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I see.
I kind of like feel like that sort of shines through regardless.
Hmm. Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Maybe you're onto something.
Maybe we got to talk to more people and see their opinions. Maybe we got to like do a poll with our
Maybe.
audience of 0 people.
It'd be good to do with like actual randoms.
Yeah.
Not like influencers like Thor and stuff like that, because like it's just random dudes on the internet or something.
Yeah. But also like
Would
to the
be
point, to like your point of like sort of the whole hierarchy thing. Yeah, it's pretty like built in into like human society that like people
mm-hmm.
higher up in the ladder get like valued more for their opinions because that tends to be like a sort of a correlation. There tends to be like a correlation between that and the competency in people's minds, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a higher likelihood that this person, by being in some kind of authority position, that what they're doing or saying is more correct than if it was someone else.
Yeah. Even though
Yeah.
that's not like always true, as we know.
Yeah, it's not always true, but generally speaking, it leads to the best outcomes on a I guess percentage based
Yeah.
thing.
So.
But
Mhm.
tell me more about. But like, I feel like you didn't like develop, you didn't like went deep enough on what you would exactly mean about this for you.
Which part do you mean exactly?
Is the topic of self worth attached to your career?
Oh yeah, it was just like a sort of like a tangential thing to get the conversation going, I think.
Mm, I
Yeah.
see.
Damn. I sort of like lost my train of thought now. Can you take over for a second?
Of course.
Thank you.
There's this thing that I had this conversation recently, and it was about it wasn't like necessarily about the topic, but it just came out of it. It was about like whether or not a very structured day is good for people,
Hmm.
and or if it's like a loose day without with the no structure
Hmm.
is better, right? And it's like I think that's kind of a tricky topic because it depends from person to person, right? And then it's not only that; it's like for some people they're in the habit of never planning anything or never structuring anything. So they think, and because it's been working out for them in some way, it's been okay.
Hmm.
They're not dead. They've been surviving. They've been, they're all right. They assume that having no structure is good for them, is the best thing. Because when they try to apply some structure, it goes against the habit pattern that they've built their whole lives. So they automatically have a resistance to it. And that resistance leads to an idea of, oh, structure for me is not good, you know? And I was wondering, like, because I've tried a lot of like structuring everything and just like, well, for most of my life it was just like super loose, right? And for me it has become somewhat clear that like super loose feels good, but it's not good,
Hmm.
right? uh, and super structured doesn't feel good at all. It's like more stress, more a bit more stressful, more anxiety inducing and stuff like that. But for sure more things get done. And then it seems like the ideal way with some kind of balance, right? Like like not too loose but not too strict either. And I feel like I feel like I don't know if this is making much sense, but like I I I was wondering like if there would be some kind of system that would work good for like especially us with like some kind of ADHD level to some extent. But it's like some structure is good for sure. But with so much structure, then it's like too straining,
Yeah.
and nothing gets done. Then we get paralyzed and end up not doing anything, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Go ahead.
I feel like it depends from person to person, right? Like on their personality. Because I have a friend that really loves Excel spreadsheets. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And he
Yeah.
basically has every bill, like everything that he ever bought, he has like the bills all entered into the Excel spreadsheet. You know what I mean? He's like an
Hmm.
incredibly organized person. That's just like how he functions. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's like a lot of personal variance. For myself personally, I sort of use like a middle system. You know what I mean? I wake up in the morning. I do my best to like commit myself to 8 hours of work, and afterwards I have 8 hours of free time, and then I have 8 hours of sleep, of course. Right?
Hmm.
So it's nothing like too strict. I just have a general guideline, and then I have like sort of lists, which I use to guide myself during the times when I have to be like productive, and I focus on what I gotta do first, what I gotta do last, and all that stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So your system is like the kind of stuff that I was like hinting at, which is like some kind of balance, which is like it's not super loose, but it's like also not super strict. Like every hour you do this or something. And use all the other tools that are like help organize and introduce a little bit of strictness into your schedule, like lists, like for example, right?
Hmm.
which I do a lot too, and I've noticed that it helps a lot for me. Like I have lists for everything. Like my phone is like has like 20 lists. It's a list for things to do, a list for the shopping, a list to make sure that before I go to work I don't forget any item. Then I do a list with like all the items that I need to check before leaving my house to go to work, and a list for the supermarket, and a list for it just lists everything,
Hmm.
all kinds of things. And I found it to be like very, very beneficial for sure, right? But that's kind of a new thing. Like I started doing lists like what, 5 years ago or something. But up until then, I maybe didn't do any lists, right? And you know, like I think my life would get easier and better if I would introduce lists before, like way before,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because I feel like so many people are just like because like in the beginning there's like some kind of resistance, right? Because you have to introduce a new tool they never used before,
Yeah.
right? Like, for example, if we never use lists, to start doing lists in the beginning is going to be a little bit boring. It's like, now I have to do this, and now I have to write this thing, blah, blah, blah. And, and it's going to be like there's a small little resistance,
Hmm.
right? Even though, like, literally after a couple of weeks, you get used to it and your life becomes infinite times easier, right? So, I don't know. It's an interesting topic because it's not so like everyone like wants to organize everything into like if you go on the internet, you go on YouTube, everyone's like, oh, schedule every single half hour for this, for that, and blah blah blah. And we all know that like that's applicable for like the very for the pitta guys, it's
Yeah.
like a
For
yeah
the
yeah
guys
it's
that like
good
don't
for
even like
them.
they don't even like really need a schedule. They're just
Yes,
like gonna get shit done regardless.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like the atomic habits thing. It's like the atomic habits works for the Pitta guys, right? And the Kappa guys, maybe. And then there's actually this channel from Elizabeth something. I don't remember her name. Elizabeth something, where she's like actually introducing a different way of like applying, like why atomic habits doesn't work for ADHD people and stuff like that. And that's a very interesting, I guess, perspective on like how to, because is the issue with all these books and stuff is that they're all directed to the productive dudes that are already productive in some way, and then they can get even more productive if they do this book,
I
So,
don't know. See, here's the thing. I would have to like read the criticism that you mentioned of the Atomic Habits first before I have an opinion of that.
mhm,
Because I know a friend who's like very much like when we say Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, we are talking about like the Ayurvedic system of personality from like ancient India. So like Vata is like very dynamic, Pitta is more like sort of consistent, and the Kapha is more like static. Like they need a lot of time to get going. So like somebody with like a very dynamic mind, what you're saying is atomic habits might not work for them. But I knew a friend who was like quite dynamic in his mind, you know what I mean? In his mind. His mind was quite dynamic, right? And he talked about like the massive benefit that he received from reading the book to his own personal
mhm.
productivity. So I would have to like I'd love to read the criticism that you like mentioned about like atomic habits first, or if you like want to talk about it directly, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, I don't remember much about it because I just watched it once, but it's like it was an interesting perspective. It forces you to think in a different way, and just assuming that atomic habits is going to work for everyone,
Yeah.
But honestly, I like the 1% stuff that atomic. I like just doing a little bit something a little bit better every day, just 1% better every day, has done wonders for me. So it also works for me for sure. Um, but like it's for quite a fair amount of people also does not, right?
Hmm.
And that's why people start wondering, like, it's like holy shit, these atomic habits is like the best of the best on how to build certain habits, how to build certain, you know, how to get rid of the bad habitual patterns that we have and stuff like that. But it doesn't work for me. Like, why is it not done? Am I just some different person in the entire universe to which this book just doesn't work, and everyone else it does, you know? And then she would present this thing. It's Elizabeth something. I'm not. This the guy that Dr.K talked with recently, like Aliabdaal or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, I watched that video. It was quite interesting.
Yeah. So this Elizabeth person, I don't remember her full name, was an assistant of Aliabdaal way back then.
Yeah.
And then she made her own channel, and then she started talking about this kind of stuff like productive habits and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it was Siv who posted this video like way back then.
Civ.
And yeah, and then he he posted this video, and I checked it out, and it's like, oh, interesting stuff. But I never, to be honest, I didn't read too much into it because I was not particularly interested at the time. But I
Mhm.
remember like a lot of people in the comments were like, holy shit, yeah, this works good for me. It's like very interesting. I'm gonna try this, blah blah blah. So it was, I know it was quite a popular video back then.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, it would be great if you could like find that video so I can like add it in the
for
description
sure, for
so
sure.
people can
Oh,
check it out as well. Yeah, talking about all that stuff, productivity, jobs, sense of self-worth.
yeah.
What about finding meaning in the work that you do?
Oh, oh.
Uh,
Honestly,
mhm.
for me, the best piece of advice I've ever received was be friends with everyone at your work,
Yeah.
at your workplace. That was the best thing ever. I feel like I feel like that's the best thing ever. It's like you can find meaning in any job if you apply this mindset. And then of course it's like like if you already are doing something that you actually truly enjoy,
Mhm.
right? If you enjoy the arts and you're working in a some artistic workshop place or something like that, then great, you know. Um, but it's very difficult, unfortunately, for quite a lot of us to start right off the bat doing the things that we want, right? Um, and I think just by being friends with everyone at work, you can find so much joy, so much significance, so much like will to actually do the best job you can at that particular whatever work you're doing, you know. And that by itself gives you so much. Um, it's almost like a trick, man. It's almost like a fucking. It's like a superpower. It gives you like you're paying attention to what you're doing. You are actually concerned with doing the best you can. You're like having joy and fun with everyone around you. You are helping them, they are helping you. You know, you're establishing connections, you're meeting people, you're hearing about their interests, you're establishing a connection with your boss, with your supervisor. There's a higher likelihood that you get promotions and stuff like that because your relationship with your boss is good and you're actually doing a good job because you're paying attention and you're having fun doing it. And it's fucking phenomenal. And it's like a trick. It's like the biggest piece of advice I've ever received about it, and it's been working very well for me. And yeah,
Awesome. So like you're basically getting yourself outside of your head and getting yourself connected with the people around you. So that makes everything
yeah,
that you do more significant in a way, right?
yeah. I guess so. I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if there
What about
are.
you?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just sort of been on the meaning train recently, even though I finally started doing what I was like supposed to do, you know, what God put
Mm-hmm.
me on earth to do, which is visual stuff, you know, like video editing, doing like designs and all that stuff. Because I tend to be like a very visual person. I care about that, and I just like being involved in the process of production from start to finish, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like sort of logo production, video editing, kind of doing a little bit of audio editing as well, learning about that stuff alongside while I'm doing the podcast, which you know what I mean. All that
Mm-hmm.
stuff is like super interesting to me. Content creation in
Yeah.
general, because I've just been like following YouTubers and online personalities for such a long time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if it's yeah. I feel like you give excellent advice, but I wonder how that could that work for somebody in like an online career. You know what I mean?
Um. Well, I guess for like solo, uh, maybe it's a bit trickier, right?
Yeah,
Um, it could work if you're like working in a company online. That can still work,
yeah.
I think. It's more applicable to traditional jobs where you go to an actual physical workspace, right?
Hmm.
Um, but tell me more about the stuff that you've been doing, man, and you know the joy it's been giving you and stuff.
Yeah, it's just like I realized I just sort of been working dead end jobs for most of my life. Just sort of like things that don't get you anywhere that you want to go. And at the time, I didn't even like know where I wanted to go with my life. I just knew that I liked helping people when they're like video projects, making like little memes and stuff, you know, really silly things. But like what they did was they got me engaged with creative suits, like the Adobe Creative Suite, engaged with like video editing with like Sony Vegas Pro and all that stuff, and I really love that stuff. As soon as I like lock in, 16 hours can pass by without me even like noticing, you know what I mean? It's like playing a video game for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's an amazing feeling, and I'd love to spend the rest of my life doing that, if that was possible.
Nice.
So yeah.
Of course it's possible. Of course it's possible.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. And what is it that you've been doing?
I've just been like, right now I'm working on an ad for a freelancing platform. I'm not going to be like too specific about that one because it's still a work in progress. And yeah, I just like want to do freelancing work, like gigs and all that stuff. Hopefully build a portfolio and move from there onto a more traditional like job environment, hopefully. And if that doesn't work out, I'm also planning on doing some like content creation on the side, like the more like regular stuff, maybe a bit of streaming, maybe like YouTube and all that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Nice.
we'll see what's gonna happen. I'm sure it's
Nice,
gonna be
man.
interesting.
I'm hyped for you, man.
Thanks.
Like I'm you can't see it because this is just voice, but I have a big smile on my face.
Yeah,
It's nice.
yeah.
I can see the joy. Like you can sense the joy when you speak about it. You know.
Yeah. I feel like I never had the courage to do it until now. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I understand you. Isn't it interesting how it works? How you know, we're like, it feels like it happens all the time. It's like we're, you know, for years we always want to do something, but then we never do it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's some random day, something, whatever, and then we start doing it, you know. And it's almost like there's like some kind of threshold that needs to be crossed in whatever way. Maybe it's a threshold of a certain amount of time that needs to pass, or a certain you know, mind anxiety that needs to be crossed, and then we'll go and do the thing, you know, or a certain nervousness or certain fear or whatever. There's some kind of threshold uh, that needs to be crossed, and then once it's there, we start doing the thing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I've started to notice that like this happens on everything, like everything, every aspect of life. It seems like.
But that like goes into like the topic of resistance, right? Because sort of in the traditional Eastern view, there's no such thing as like motivation. There's just resistance. Everybody's motivated. It's just that sort of like resistance that exists that keeps people from doing what they wish to do. You know what I mean? Whether that's like
Yeah.
fear or anxiety or like preconceived notions about themselves that they have because of like early childhood experiences and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And how even in traditions like Buddhism, they talk about is suffering and the absence of suffering, right? Which is like all that exists is suffering, and then when there's no suffering, we call it happiness, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, you know, it's like how in physics, you know, like cold doesn't exist. What exists is heat, and when there's no heat, we call it cold. But cold is just the absence of heat. Because whether or not there's like heat in a place or not so much heat in that particular place, and there's not so much heat, then we give it a different name. We call it cold. But cold is not a thing that exists. The only thing that exists is heat, and then when heat is not there, we call it cold.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that way.
Yeah, but it's also like interesting. Heat is just like the amount of energy that an object has. And I remember
Exactly.
like watching this video where this guy like just said, matter is just energy slowed down, and it was like the wildest shit ever. You know what I mean? Because it makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm very happy for you, man, that you're doing this stuff. It's really nice.
Well, yeah, it's still like it's still up for debate whether it's going to be successful or not. Cause,
Oh, it doesn't matter, man. You're
yeah.
having joy right now.
Yeah, well,
That's
it
cool.
does kind of matter if I end up being homeless or some shit. You know what I mean? I don't
Oh,
want to live out of a
yeah,
tent.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I'm
There's
sort of like
some
giving
realistic.
myself. Yeah, I'm sort of like giving myself a timer until the end of this year. So if stuff doesn't work out, I'm probably gonna just go to another country and work a regular job there and make a ton of money and feel unhappy and be like everybody else.
Oh no, you're going the doomer train.
Yeah.
No, but I get you. We have to be realistic as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there was this like
Man.
wild video. Like Jake Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was this guy that showed up at one of his thingies, like he had like a conference or something, and the guy told him like, "Hey, I quit my job and traveled halfway across the country to work for you. You're my idol. All this stuff, blah blah blah. Please let me have a job." And he's like, "Yeah, what do you know how to do?" And it's like, and he's like saying, "I'll do anything, please. I'll just like." And he like sort of had this idea in his mind because he invested so much. He like quit his job. He moved to that like place where the guy is at. Like he was going to give him a job, but he like didn't. He sort of like shot him down because like he didn't have any marketable skills. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of spooky.
What's spooky about it?
That the guy went like, well, he was probably going a little bit crazy. I don't know,
Yeah.
but you know, he went all this way, and then the guy's just like, no.
The gig said no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was like sort of making this decisions based on like his emotions, right? Mostly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not like really considering the factual matter at hand. That he has
Hmm.
to have some sort of skill set which he is able to market and be useful in some capacity to this person he wants to work with.
Yeah.
Hmm.
For sure.
I wonder how many times that happens in life. You know what I mean? Just in general. Or do people
Oof.
usually just act rationally? Maybe I'm the impulsive one.
I think with celebrities like that, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But even without celebrities, like I guess with regular daily stuff, daily life stuff with regular people, probably happens way more than we think. I think we are like people like me and you. We're like way more stable than we give ourselves credit. You know?
Are we? I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm exactly as stable as I was before. I just noticed myself spiraling and then I'm able to like stop myself. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. But like 99% of people don't do that ever.
Yeah.
And they will probably never do it in their entire lives.
Well,
You
that's
know?
what this podcast is here for, and we're gonna get everybody into mindfulness, and everybody's gonna be like meditating and all doing all this like fucking yoga bullshit. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That's gonna
Some
be our
funny
niche.
funny
That's gonna be our
stretch.
niche market. You know what I mean? This is how we're gonna make our
True.
money. We're gonna be selling fucking yoga mats and like meditation cups. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And t-shirts,
Hell yeah. What are some slogans we can put on a t-shirt about like meditation?
forklift, podcast t-shirts.
Just nothing related to meditation.
Nothing at all.
Yeah,
Nothing at all.
just like forklift certified podcast and just like meditate with an exclamation mark. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That's just gonna
Bro,
be it. Mhm.
there's this guy called Simon Squibb. I talked about him before. And he's a great inspiration for like people, I think even people like us,
Yeah.
where like it's clearly clear that we want to do something different with our lives, but we're not sure how. And he's he just gives really nice tips, I guess, on
Hmm.
like just doing stuff like for example, what are you doing now with the video editing and the visual stuff? Like what he would say, I can already copy what he would say. He would say, "Okay, create a Instagram, a YouTube, and a TikTok account, and document your journey, document your learning process, document the stuff that you've been doing. Make some funny clips every now and then or whatever. Make it educational, make it entertaining. You know, and by the end of the year, you'll be earning some money." Just out of the social media stuff that you made, and then you start making a small name for yourself and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and you're learning skills at the same time, right? And because actually for you it's even better because you're learning visual stuff and video editing and stuff, and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok do have a little bit of that component as well, right? So you're like applying some of those skills in the video editing of the Instagram reels and the TikToks and stuff like that. So it's like a win-win, Because for example, if a person wants to start making a restaurant business, then like cooking has nothing to do with video editing, but the person still has to video edit in some way. But for you, it's like if you're learning the actual visual stuff, then when you post it on the social media, you're actually applying some of those skills as well to some extent, right? It's not going to be probably as draining as it would be for someone else who has like nothing to do with. Is not particularly interested in the video editing skills or whatever, because they just want to cook and make cook videos.
Yeah.
So yeah. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I wanted to say something, but I forgot. God damn it. Yeah, the whole thing about like documenting your journey and all that stuff and creating social media accounts. Yeah, it's all like solid advice, I think.
Yeah. Well,
One thing I noticed, the most important thing for like any creative endeavor is to just like always keep creating. Like it doesn't matter
yes.
what it is, if it's just like a stupid meme or something, or just like a small edit, just like keep the ball rolling, because that's
Mm-hmm.
the most important thing. Just like keep the thoughts in your mind about that topic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just like even when I was like learning how to draw, like even drawing one picture, one sort of like scribble every day is so important, right?
Yes.
Because it's sort of like the whole process by which we think and by which our thoughts are connected with each other, right? Like it's almost like a stream,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sort of like coloring the water with a certain kind of thought, and
Yeah.
it carries downwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the way that I think about it is like you're gonna have like a certain amount of thoughts until you die.
Yes.
And how many of those thoughts do you want to be productive? How many of them do you want to be like focused on what you want to do in life? How many of them do you want to be anxious thoughts? How many of those thoughts do you want to be like hateful? How many of them do you want to be like happy thoughts? How many of them
Yep.
do you want to be like kind thoughts? You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
it's everything's sort of like a finite resource. Because
For
it's all
sure.
gonna end someday.
Someday.
Yeah.
That is true. That is very good. Yeah. I think what you're talking about is a habit, right? You're talking about a habit,
Yeah,
building a
yeah.
habit
A
of
mental habit,
thinking.
sort of.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Exactly. Yeah.
just noticing that. Yeah. I remember like Dr.K, the psychologist guy, like how he talked about for people
The
with ADHD.
psychologist guy.
Yeah, well, that's what people
That's
are.
what it is.
The guys that like listen to us, they probably don't know who he is. You know what I mean? Even though like you and me have been watching him for like years, they probably heard him for like the first time in their
Yes.
lives. So like that's what we're gonna refer to him as. He's helped both of us massively. He's a wonderful person, and like we are very thankful for his existence. But he's the psychologist guy for the purpose of this conversation.
Yep.
So yeah, he was talking about how people with ADHD they keep going from one thing to the other, and that's how they like never get anything done. But the whole goal should be like to have like 3 or 4 things which you like juggle around, and that
Yes.
way you, as soon as you like get to the fourth thing and you get bored, you just switch back to the first thing, and you can just keep that like sort of chain going infinitely, and you can be like actually way more productive than regular people because you're constantly doing a bunch of shit that's like interrelated. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've noticed that because for a short period of time, when I was like not doing anything,
Hmm.
and then I had like small little projects and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna write a little book on communication or something like that.
Yeah.
Then I started doing that, and then I was like, oh, now I'm gonna work a little bit on my side job, the side gig that I have. It's like, oh, that's like an hour a day or something. Okay, nice. And then I'm gonna do something else. It's just like it works. It definitely works. It definitely works. I do find it tricky to like do it consistently.
Hmm.
If you have a full-time job or something like that, to do it uh, consistently every day, it's tricky. But if you have a lot of free time and if there's like some kind of intentional dedication to like, okay, I'm going to structure my day a little bit so that I have like 2, 3, 4 things to do every day, and I'm going to do it for like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then hop to the second thing, and then an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and then hop on to the third thing, and so on. It's very effective. It's very nice. It's very nice.
Yeah, I noticed like the first couple of hours when you wake up are so critical if you want to like build
Yes.
that sort of habit. It's so important because like getting the ball rolling in those first couple of hours is so much easier, and it just like the momentum carries onwards throughout the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel
The
like,
the
mhm,
the like just the getting the momentum going on, it's so important. Like if you wake up and start scrolling on your phone, it's doomed.
yeah, it's
It's
fucked.
doomed.
You're not pulling
It's
out of that
already
one.
fucked.
Yeah.
Yes. You're not pulling out of that one at all. But if you wake up and go do something productive, or don't touch your phone for like the next hour or 2 hours or whatever, and you just go do something that you want to do,
Mhm.
even if it's just like going out for a run or something, whatever it is, like, or if it's like, productivity related, like you sit on your computer and you start working a little bit or whatever it is you're doing, then it's like such a big difference. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's like some kind of skill period. Like after, I want to say, like after the fourth hour or something,
Mm.
you start noticing diminishing returns. But the first 4 hours after you wake up are like top notch.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. There was something else I wanted to say about like the yeah yeah that's basically it.
Did you forgot about it or what
Yeah, I
happened?
kind of forgot about it, but also we talked about everything related to those like that sort of like early period in the morning and how critical it is and how much it
Mm.
defines. Yeah, I wanted to say like I feel like, and I'm getting this feeling more and more as I get older. Uh, the whole point of life is to get like a perfect day, and to just like repeat that forever. You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting.
Because
Interesting
there's
way
because
to put it.
there's only one day that exists, the current day. You know what I mean?
True.
And you just have to get that one right, and you have to keep doing that until the rest of your life, and you're gonna be okay.
Oh, true. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's what Dr.K says, right? They're like, just focus on, like, you can't have a good grade. All you can do is just study tomorrow or something, or study today. Sorry.
Yeah,
Right.
you
All you
can't
can
get
do.
like results. You can like just do the work, and like whatever happens
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Oh, there is one thing that I want to talk about
Hmm.
quickly. So yesterday we had a private chat and stuff for a little bit,
Yeah.
and like you gave me some nice compliments and stuff, and I'm very bad at like actually accepting compliments.
Uh huh.
So when you compliment me in some way, I don't know how to properly receive them.
Yeah.
Like a few years ago, I was in this group of people like interested in bettering themselves and stuff, and the
Hold on. They
meditation and
were
stuff.
okay. They were like interested in spirituality and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the uh, conversations we had was about learning how to accept a compliment, right?
Hmm.
Because actually, the process of uh, accepting it or taking a compliment and accepting it, it's a two-way stream. It's like if the person does not receive it, then the process is not complete. If the person does not receive it adequately, then the compliment is like it's not it's more than just does not have an effect. It's more than that. It's like you have a social contract that is not being fulfilled, if that makes sense. And I'm very bad at that. And so, well, I wanted to I guess to say thank you for all the nice things that you say about me, and that I do appreciate them. I really do, and that I don't know how to take them because it's just weird. It's just weird when people compliment me or something like that. I just brush it off. Like there's like this automatic reaction of like yeah, yeah, let's move on to something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Almost like a kind of discomfort is what I'm
yeah, yeah,
getting.
it's uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar and it's like feels weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that I sincerely appreciate it, and thank you for being an awesome guy.
My
And
pleasure. Likewise. You're an awesome guy as well.
thank you, man. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it.
Yeah. I'm
That's all I wanted to say.
I'm kind of like yeah. I feel like I got better with compliments. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just like getting more narcissistic. But when people compliment my appearance, I noticed happened when I was like visiting my brothers. I was like well dressed. It was like a sort of thing for my niece.
Mm.
People are telling me how like I look like a model and all that stuff, and I was just like, I just tell
Oh,
them
really?
thank you with a smile, because I kind of know I'm good looking in that moment, so it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Like maybe it would be like
Gigi
weird,
chat.
kind sometimes, not always, definitely not always. My Giga Chat moments are in the minority as of now. Maybe that'll
Mm.
improve, but yeah, if I feel like if it's something that I'm already like confident about and the compliment is like easy to handle, but if it's something I'm
Oh,
sort of like more insecure about, I feel like that's when things get difficult. You know what I mean?
true, 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 true. Yeah, yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, if you wanna listen to more hours of us complimenting each other, tune in to the next episode of the Forklift Certified podcast. we're aiming to like release one episode every week, hopefully. So yeah, tell us what you think about the episode. If you love it, if you hate it, make your voice heard in the comments. Yell at us, whatever it is. We'd love to hear from you. And
Yes.
yeah,
And give us a like.
and subscribe and hit the bell
And
button
subscribe. Yes.
and buy our merchandise, which is coming soon.
Yes. And subscribe to our course.
Yeah, and also our Patreon,
Yes.
which doesn't exist yet, but we're gonna make it eventually for behind the scenes content. Who knows? We still haven't thought about that stuff. Anyways, everybody, our dear listeners, we hope you have a wonderful day. And if you're not having a good day, we hope it gets better. So see you next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.